ॐ विश्वंदर्पण दृश्यमान नगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नम इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वातिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ तपोभिः क्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणां मुमुक्षूणामपेक्ष्योऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते. I welcome you all to the 21st class of the Atma Bodha series. We will read verses 47 to 49 that we completed in the last class and then proceed from there. Samyak vijnanavan yogi
सम्यक् विज्ञानवान् योगी
स्वात्मन्येवाखिलं जगत्
स्वात्मन्येवाखिलं जगत्
एकञ्च सर्वमात्मानम्
एकञ्च सर्वमात्मानम्
ईक्षते ज्ञानचक्षुषा
ईक्षते ज्ञानचक्षुषा
आत्मैवेदं जगत् सर्वम्
आत्मैवेदं जगत् सर्वम्
आत्मनोऽन्यन्न विद्यते
आत्मनोऽन्यन्न विद्यते
मृदो यद्वद्घटादीनि
मृदो यद्वत् घटादीनि
स्वात्मानं सर्वमीक्षते
स्वात्मानं सर्वमीक्षते
जीवन्मुक्तस्तु तद्विद्वान्
जीवन्मुक्तस्तु तद्विद्वान्
पूर्वोपाधिगुणान् त्यजेत्
पूर्वोपाधिगुणान् त्यजेत्
सच्चिदानन्दरूपत्वात्
सच्चिदानन्दरूपत्वाद्
भवेद् भ्रमरकीटवत्
भवेत् भ्रमरकीटवत्.
In this set of verses, Bhagavad is talking about the Jnana Phalam, the benefit of this knowledge. And what is this knowledge? It is Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. Brahman is the absolute reality. This world that appears in front of me is not the reality. And the Jiva is none other than Brahman. And when the student receives this knowledge, the student understands Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Satyam Jagan Mithya, Aham Brahmaiva Naparaha. So Bhagavad Pada here is talking about the benefits of the knowledge. And in general, we can say the benefit is Jivanmukta, liberation even when one is living. But Bhagavad Pada is getting into some more specifics of the benefit of the knowledge. And the first benefit is Ajnana Nivrittihi, removal of Ajnanam. The Ajnanam is the cause of all of my confusion, all of my misconceptions, and samsara. So Ajnanam removal is the thing that Vedānta is aiming for. Ajnana Nivrittihi. Then the second benefit is Adhyasa Nivrittihi. When the Ajnanam is removed, then the Adhyasa, the misconceptions that follow from the ignorance, they also get removed. The Bhagavad Pada compared this knowledge to fire, Jnana Agnihi, that consumes all the oblations that are offered into it. And the first oblation is Ajnanam, Sarva Jnane Dhanam Dahet. Then the second oblation that is offered into it is Adhyasa, the misconceptions that arise from the Ajnana. And Bhagavad Pada gave the example of Sthanu Purushaha, the stump of a tree that in semi-darkness is mistaken to be a thief. It's a mistake arising out of ignorance. And how is that mistake removed? By removing the ignorance. And how is that removed? By throwing a torchlight. With a torch, I throw the torchlight upon the thing that I am confused about. And in the presence of that light, that illumines what is really there, I get to know what really is. Therefore, I see that what is here is a harmless stump. Thief was a superimposition, a trick of ignorance. Similarly, here, in my case, I know that I am. Because the Ātma is self-evident. I know that I am. But I don't know who or what I am. Therefore, Samanya Jnanam is there, Vishesha Jnanam is not there. This results in the Adhyasa or misconception. And therefore, on what I am, which is really Brahman, I superimpose this Jivata, this Jivahood, this limited existence, mortal existence as this body and mind. I start to say, I am this limited body and mind in this separate world. This is the Adhyasa. So how is this Adhyasa removed? Again, by removing the ignorance. By throwing the torchlight from the torch of the Mahavakya. The Mahavakya tells me that I am really Brahman. So through an understanding of the Mahavakya, I come to know of this one reality that pervades both Jiva and Ishvara, and that reality which is Brahman, that I am, essentially Jiva and Ishvara are one. The differences are only due to Mithya. So when this understanding dawns on me, then I understand Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. And when I understand I am Brahman, I can no longer simultaneously say that I am the Jiva. They are mutually exclusive. in terms of reality. I am in reality, Paramarthika Satyam wise, I am Brahman, the absolute reality. But then I put on the costume of the Jiva in a lower order of reality. But really speaking, I am Brahman, just like the actor on the stage puts on a costume for the purposes of the drama. But the actor will never claim that I am really that role that I am playing in that costume. The actor will say, I am the actor. So similarly, I am really Brahman who puts on the costume of the Jiva in the absence of the knowledge that I am Brahman. I take myself to be the costume, then suffer. So the second benefit of the knowledge is the removal of the misconception, adhyasa, superimposition. Then the third benefit of the knowledge is the removal of ahankara and mamakara. Ahankara is this misconception that I am this body mind. And mamakara is this misconception that this family, these possessions, and this profession, some of the anatmas in the world, they are mine. So the idea of mine arises only when I associate myself with this body and mind. Through the body and mind, I become related to other things, the family, my possessions, my profession. But then Vedanta falsifies the idea that I am this body mind, being really Brahman. Therefore, belonging to a higher order of reality that is Brahman, I really have no connection with this body mind. Therefore, the ahankara is falsified. And when the ahankara is falsified, the mamakara, that these are mine, that also gets falsified. Because that connection to the things that I claim as being mine happens only through the body and mind. So, ahankara, mamakara, nivrittihi is the third benefit. Then the fourth benefit that Bhagavad Pada is talking about in verse 47 is the total transformation of the vision of a jnani. Samyak Vijnanavan Yogi. He said, Samyak Vijnanavan Yogi refers to somebody who has gone through Shravanam, has gained the knowledge, has gone through Mananam, where the knowledge becomes Samyak Vijnana. And then he's a yogi because he has also done nididhyasanam and he has worked on all these contrary habitual tendencies that are opposed to the knowledge. Therefore, he has very well assimilated the knowledge. So such a person's vision undergoes a total transformation. What kind of transformation? He says, Swatmani eva akhilan jagat ikshate. He sees the entire world is in me. So if you were to take an Ajnani, as we saw, Ajnani's vision is that I am the limited body mind in this separate world. And I am being persecuted by this world. I am a struggling samsari. And I need to run to Ishvara, a separate Ishvara, who is my savior, who has to save me from this world. This is the Ajnani's vision. And what is the Ajnani's vision? Swatmani eva akhilan jagat ikshate. So in case of the Ajnani says that the world is a supporter, I am supported. The world is Adhara, I am the Adheya. The Jnani says that I am the supporter, the entire world becomes the supported. As Brahman, the entire world arises in me, is sustained by me, and resolves into me. Therefore, I become the Adhara and the world becomes the Adheya. This is diametrically opposite to the Ajnani's vision. This is the transformation of the vision. Exactly like in a dream, in a dream, that dream individual says that I am this limited body in this separate world, and I am being chased by this lion, and I am suffering in this forest, etc. But what happens when he awakens? From the waker's perspective, he says that both the dream individual as well as the dream world were in me. They did not have a separate existence at all. So this similar transformation of vision we are talking about in case of the Jnani also. So the dream individual would have said that I am the Adheya, the world is the Adhara, but from the perspective of the waker says, I am the Adhara, the dream world is the Adheya. And then Bhagavad says that to say that the world is supported and I am supporter, I am the supporter, there is still a duality here. The duality of the supported and the supporter, the duality of the drishyam and the duality of the object and the subject. And one has to swallow this duality also. How? By understanding that the entire world is in a lower order of reality. I belong to a higher order of reality. That world that I see as separate has no independent existence at all. It depends on me for its existence. And therefore, there is no second thing called the world at all. The world is just my own nama rupas. Exactly like there is no second thing called ornament other than the gold. The ornament is only nama rupas of the gold. There is no second thing called pots other than clay. In fact, this is the point that Bhagavad makes in the next verse. But before we come to that, Bhagavad points out, how does the Jnani know this? Through Jnana Chakshusha, through the eye of knowledge. His physical eyes show him exactly what is seen by the Ajnani also, but the interpretation of what he sees is totally different because he has the vision of Vedānta. He has assimilated the vision of Vedānta. He is seeing through the Shabda Pramana of Vedānta. The knowledge that has been gained through the Shabda Pramana of Vedanta. And therefore, Jnana Chakshusha, he sees through the eye of knowledge. Then in the next verse, Bhagavad points out that in any product, the Upadana Karanam alone is. Yado Yadvat Ghatadini. The Upadana Karanam alone is. So if we take the example of clay pots, then in a world of clay pots, clay alone is. In a world of gold ornaments, the gold alone is. Everything else is in Nama Rupas of the Upadana Karanam. All the products are Nama Rupas of the material cause. So here I have determined, once I have determined that I am the Vivarta Upadana Karanam, which is Brahman, then everything here becomes my names and forms. Atmai Vedam Jagat Sarvam. Atmano Anyat na vidyate. There is nothing else other than Atma, which is Brahman. Exactly like there are no parts other than the clay. And then Bhagavad talks about the Jivanmukta. The one who knows this is a Jivanmukta. One who has assimilated this knowledge is a Jivanmukta. Because he knows that I am always liberated. Being of a higher order of reality, whatever is in a lower order of reality cannot touch me, cannot affect me. Just as if the pot breaks, it cannot affect the clay, just as if the gold bangle gets dented. It cannot affect the gold. Similarly, whatever happens in the lower order of reality, it cannot touch me, who is the Upadana Karanam. I belong to a higher order of reality. And therefore, Purvopadhi Gunans Tyajet. He drops the attributes of all these upadhis, of all of the three shariras. Because he knows that all of these three shariras are mithya, belonging to a lower order of reality, so their attributes also belong to a lower order of reality. And I am untouched, unaffected by all of this. Therefore, as this Satyam Brahma, moksha is my very nature. As this Satyam Vivarta Upadana Karanam, moksha is my very nature. Moksha is not something that I need to gain because it is my nature. It is accomplished here and now. It was always accomplished. At that point, I just did not know it as accomplished. Therefore, he is a Nitya Mukta. Nitya Mukta means eternally liberated, was never bound to begin with in order to become liberated. Such a person who has clear understanding of this is a Jivanmukta. And Bhagavad gave the example of Brahmara Kitavats, like the legend, as in the legend of the wasp and the worm. The worm, as though contemplating on the wasp, becomes a wasp. As we saw, the wasp gets hold of the worm and places it in its nest, and then stings it once in a while. The worm, being terrified of the wasp, is constantly looking at the wasp. And then the legend goes that the worm becomes a wasp. But as we saw, apparently what happens is the wasp puts one of its eggs inside the worm when it stings it. And then the egg hatches inside the worm. And a baby wasp emerges from that egg, which then consumes the internals of the worm and then breaks open the upadhi of the worm and emerges as a wasp. So figuratively, the worm becomes a wasp by as though contemplating upon the wasp, because the worm is constantly looking at the wasp. So similarly here, this jnani gained the knowledge through Shravanam and Mananam. Doubtless clear knowledge, and assimilates this knowledge through Nididhyasanam, constant contemplation upon his real nature, which is Brahman, and then figuratively becomes Brahman. So here the Jiva is compared to the worm, and Brahman is compared to the wasp. Let's go to the next verse. And here, Bhagavad gives a bird's eye view of the journey of the Jivanmukta through a comparison with Ramayana, with the story of Ramayana. We'll see this verse. Tīrtva moharnavam hatva
तीत्वा मोहार्णवं हत्वा
ragadveshadirakshasan
रागद्वेषादिराक्षसान्
yogi shanti samayuktaha
योगी शान्तिसमायुक्तः
Ātmā Rāmo virajate.
आत्मा रामो विराजते.
Here, the journey of a Jivanmukta is compared to the story of Rama. So every seeker is compared to Rama. And as we all know very well, Rama is wedded to Sita. And the two are inseparable. And they are sent to the forest. They go to the forest together, where Sita gets kidnapped. And subsequently, Rama, having lost Sita, is worried, anxious, and suffering in that forest. And getting Sita back is not easy. First of all, Rama has to find out where Sita is. And that itself, there's a very, very long story in Ramayana about how all of that happens. And once he has discovered where Sita is, then he has to cross the ocean. And after having crossed the ocean, he has to neutralize all the assistant Rakshasas there. And then finally, he has to neutralize, eliminate the main Rakshasa Ravana before he can reclaim Sita. So all of these aspects of the story are brought out in this verse by pointing out that each of us is like Rama. And if we look at the etymology of the word Rama, then the etymological meaning of the word Rama is Ramante Yoginaha Yasmin, meaning the one in whom the yogis revel. One in whom the yogis revel. And in what do the yogis revel? They revel in the Ātmā. Because the Ātmā is full, complete, limitless. Therefore, the meaning of the word is the Ātmā in which the yogis revel. For Rama is nothing but the Ātmā, which is really all of our real nature. And then what is the analog of Sita? It is the Purnatvam, Mokshaha, Yananda, the Śāntiḥ. That is the real nature of the Atma. Therefore, we say that Rama and Sita are really inseparable in that sense, because this Sita like Śanti is the nature of Rama like Atma. But still, we have lost Śanti. Well, we think our understanding is that I am Apurna. In spite of Purnatvam, the Śanti being my real nature, the human being says that I am Apurnaha, I lack peace, I lack security, I lack happiness. So how has this happened? This loss has happened due to self-ignorance, and self-ignorance alone. So now this human being is anxious, worried, suffering in this forest of samsara. Once the Śanti is lost, once this Purnatvam is lost, then the human being invariably comes into samsara, this forest of samsara. And now getting back Śanti is required. But getting back Śanti, this Purnatvam, is not easy. First of all, the human being has to find out where the Śanti really is. That's the first problem. So just like Rama had to do a lot of research in the story before they find out where Sita is, similarly, this person who has lost this Śanti, lost this Purnatvam, is struggling in samsara trying to find the Śanti. But then eventually he has to come to the Guru and Shastra, which point out where Śanti really is, the Śanti that he is seeking, where it really is. So the Guru and Shastra point out that the Śanti is your own Swarupa. You are looking for it in the wrong place. And then there is another comparison with Sita here, which is that one of the names of Sita is Vaidehi. Vaidehi means daughter of Videha. And Videha literally means one without a body. Videha. But if we look at it, it really refers to one who has the knowledge that I am not the body mind. Therefore, Sita is a daughter of one who has this knowledge, which means Sita is born of this knowledge that I am not this body mind. The Sita, like Śanti, is born out of this knowledge. And therefore, the Shastras tell me that Sita, like Śanti, is your own Swarupa. And this Sita, like Śanti, can only be acquired through this self-knowledge of your real nature, which involves this knowledge that I am not the body mind. Vaidehi. So now, having discovered this, where Sita is, I have to cross the ocean. I too have to cross the ocean. And what is the ocean that I have to cross? It is the delusion that this Shanti, this Purnatvam can be acquired through the world. And therefore, this orientation of my extrovertedness, seeking for this Shanti, seeking for this Purnatvam in the world has to go. And therefore, he says, Tirtva, Tirtva, meaning having crossed over. Having crossed over what? Moharnavam, the great ocean of delusion. Moharnavam. Moharnavam Tirtva. And what is the delusion? That I can gain the Shanti that I have lost. I can gain the Shanti, this Purnatvam, the Ananda from the external world. That I can gain the Shanti and Purnatvam by rearranging the external world in accordance with my ragas and dveshas. That's going to come. Raga, dveshadi, rakshasan, hatva. So, by manipulating, arranging this world and keeping with my ragas and dveshas, I can somehow attain the Shanti. That is the delusion. That artha, the pursuit of the first three purusharthas, artha, pursuit of wealth and possessions, kamaha, pursuit of pleasures in this world, and dharmaha, pursuit of religion, pursuit of merit, pursuit of punya for the sake of artha and kama. That the pursuit of these first three purusharthas is somehow going to make me purnaha, somehow going to make me gain the Shanti. This is the delusion. So now Rama had to cross this ocean. Therefore, he had to build this setu to cross the ocean. So what is the equivalent of the setu here? It is nitya nitya vastu vivekaha. Vivekaha, that I cannot gain what I am seeking from this world, is the setu that leads me to where Shanti is. Nitya nitya vastu viveka. But then is this enough? Is having viveka enough? Rama built the setu and crossed the ocean. But then he had more work to do there, which is the neutralization of all these Rakshasas, beginning with the assistant Rakshasas that are there. What are the Rakshasas here? Raga Dveshadi Rakshasa. So just like Rama had to neutralize all the assistant Rakshasas, I too have to neutralize a lot of Rakshasas, starting with Raga and Dvesha. So if we look at the story of Ramayana, then the Raga Dvesha also had a role to play in the kidnapping of Sita. Because Sita was attracted to the golden deer. And the golden deer is really mithya vastu. It is not really there. It is mayikam. But then Sita is drawn towards that golden deer. Why? Because of raga for the golden deer. So similarly in our lives, these raga dvesha are what pull me into the mithya world, into engaging in this mithya world, into pursuing this mithya world, thinking that this is going to give me Śanti. So I have to neutralize my own ragas and dveshas. How? Through the practice of karma yoga. By recognizing that ragas and dveshas are the ones that are constantly making my mind restless, constantly making me engage in this world. Therefore, karma yoga, through karma yoga, I neutralize the rakshasas of raga and dvesha. So this is the equivalent of gaining vairagyam. So setu is the nitya vastu vivekaha, neutralization of raga dveshas is gaining vairagya. And then the adipada is there, which means there are other rakshasas other than the raga dvesha also which I have to neutralize. Like Rama had to deal with Kumbhakarna, who slept 6 months of the year. So he had to be woken up with a lot of elephants and drums and all of these people. A very giant Rakshasa. In fact, Pujya Swamiji jokingly points out that when Kumbhakarna needs a haircut or a shave, then there are literally hundreds of barbers or thousands of barbers who had to work on him at the same time. And there was one barber who was trimming his mustache. And then as Kumbhakarna breathes in, the barber goes into his lungs. And, and then as he breathes out, he gets thrown out. And then he has to climb his body again to continue his job. So a lot of funny stories around Kumbhakarna. So anyway, a very giant Rakshasa and represents tamas. Tamas. So tamas has to be overcome, which is generally there can be a lot of lethargy, inertia in terms of just continuing in the same direction I have been continuing, in terms of altering the direction from which I have been continuing. Because if one has to take on the spiritual path and move on it, one needs a certain resolve, a certain commitment. And tamas will not allow such a resolve to arise. And therefore one has to overcome tamas. And then after Kumbhakarna was neutralized, then subsequently there was Indrajit also. And he is the son of Ravana. So Ravana can be compared to Rajas. So son of Ravana is Indrajit. There's a lot of restlessness in the mind. Even after neutralizing the raga dveshas, the restlessness of the mind, the constant jumping of the mind from here to there, that can continue. And therefore, one has to make the mind single pointed through upasana yoga. So karma yoga and upasana yoga neutralize a lot of these assistant rakshasas. And now Rama has the job of the main rakshasa, who is Ravana. When we come to Ravana, then the fight between Rama and Ravana begins. And in the spiritual world, it is a fight now that Raga, Dveshas and all of the assistant Rakshasas are neutralized. Now what remains is the Adhyasa and Ajnanam. These are the two Rakshasas that are remaining. So now Rama finds an interesting situation that he is firing arrows after arrows at Ravana's heads. And the heads keep reappearing, keep reappearing. He doesn't die. And the reason is that there is another cause that is sustaining his heads, which is this elixir or some kind of special potion, right, that resides in his body. And there are two versions. It could be the navel or his heart. And different versions of Ramayana, they say, some say it's the navel, some say it's the heart. So because of this, his heads keep arising. So his 10 heads, they represent various misconceptions, adhyasas. So if you try to attack the adhyasas directly, as long as that portion is there, the heads keep arising. Similarly, as long as the ajnanam is there, the adhyasa keeps coming back, keeps coming back. You cannot attack the adhyasa directly. You have to attack the ajnanam in order to remove the adhyasa. So now, Rama, what did Rama do? He had to go to Agastya. He had to go to Agastya. And there he got the Aditya, Upadesham of the Aditya Hridayam, along with the Brahmastra that he had to use in the battle. So similarly, the spiritual seeker cannot finish this job by himself. He has to go to a guru and get the Mahavakya Upadesha and the Brahmastra from the guru, which is this Aham Brahmasmi Vrittihi. So Rama took this Brahmastra and aimed it at his navel or his heart, which had this elixir, this potion, which is likened to our Ajnana. And when that Brahmastra dried up the elixir, then the misconceptions, the heads of Ramana were removed forever. So similarly, with the Mahavakya Upadesha and the Brahmastra of the Aham Brahmasmi Vritti that arises through the Mahavakya Upadesha, the Ajnanam is neutralized. And with that, the Adhyasas also go away. And then one recognizes that the Shanti that I have been seeking in this world is really my own nature, being Satyam Brahma. Therefore, he gets united with this Sita like Śanti. The seeker like Rama gets united with this Śanti, with this Sita like Śanti. Therefore, he says, Virajate, just like Rama got united with Sita, and then he ruled over this kingdom of Ayodhya. And Ayodhya, if you look at the meaning of the word, it means the kingdom that can never be attacked, that can never be lost. Ayodhya can never be attacked. There is no question of losing it. And therefore, this yogi also now rules over this kingdom of Ayodhya with having been united with the Sita like Śanti. And therefore he says Virajate. If you look at the last word, the second line, Virajate, means he shines. Who shines? Yogi Virajate. Yogi is the first word in the last line. Yogi Virajate. Means this Jnana Yogi shines. And how does he shine? With what does he shine? Śānti Samayuktaha. Because he has reclaimed his original nature as Satyam Brahma. He knows that I am Satyam Brahma. Purnatvam, Śanti is my very nature. It cannot be attacked. and it can never be lost. And therefore, he regains the Shanti, that is his own nature. Shanti samayuktaha. And then there another word here that describes the yogi. He says, Atma Ramaha. Yogi Atma Ramaha. Yogi Shanti samayuktaha Atma Ramaha virajate. Atma Ramaha means Atmani eva krida yasya saha. Is one who revels in his own nature. Well, he knows that I am full, limitless, and complete. And once I know that, then there is no need to look for anything else. I am Purna. There is no other second thing, really speaking. Therefore, he says, Yogi Virajate, meaning he shines, he stands out. How does he shine? How does he stand out? Well, even in these tough, challenging situations, he knows that I am ever liberated. And having assimilated this jnanam, even at the level of the mind, he has got the FIR reduction. The mind doesn't get upset, even in very difficult situations. And therefore, in these tough, critical situations, he himself is calm and composed, having understood that I am eternally liberated, and he can help the others who are in distress with this knowledge. So, virajate. We'll go to the next verse. Bahya nitya sukha saktim
बाह्यान् नित्यसुखासक्तिम्
hitva sukha nirvritaha
हित्वात्मसुखनिर्वृतः
ghatastha deepavat swasthaha
घटस्थदीपवत् स्वस्थः
svantareva prakashate.
स्वान्तरेव प्रकाशते.
Here, Bhagavad is further elaborating on the meaning of the word Atma Ramaha from the previous verse. We have talked about some of this before, that there are two types of happiness or ananda. One is Atmananda, which is the ananda that is my real nature as the Atma. It never comes and goes. And the second is this Vishayananda. Vishayananda is this experiential happiness that arises in a conducive state of mind. So, for such experiential happiness to arise, the world must be in keeping with my ragas and dveshas. When the world is in keeping with my ragas and dveshas, then the mind is in a relaxed state. And when the mind is in a relaxed state, this Atmananda, that is the real nature of Atma, gets reflected in the mind as experiential happiness. Therefore, for this experiential happiness to arise, a few conditions must be met. Firstly, the mind must be in a conducive state. And when does the mind be in a conducive state? When the world is in keeping with my ragas and dveshas. And when is the world in keeping with my ragas and dveshas? Either I have put in a lot of effort to bring the world in keeping with my ragas and dveshas, or because my prarabdha is such that the world is in keeping with my ragas and dveshas. So multiple conditions have to be there for this conducive state of mind to arise. And therefore, this reflection of the Atmananda, the experiential happiness, is a dependent happiness. It depends on multiple conditions being satisfied, and therefore it always comes and goes. It can never be constant. Even for a jnani, prarabdha can affect the jnani's mind also. And in those cases, the jnani may not enjoy this experiential happiness. But at that point, he knows that I am of the nature of happiness. And therefore, even if that ananda is not there, I am fine. Even if the reflected happiness is not there, he is not affected. Because he says that, okay, the reflection of my real nature is not there in the mind for the time being. That doesn't mean that I am not there. Just like if your reflection in the face is there for some time, of the face in the mirror is there, your reflection of your face in the mirror is there for some time, you can enjoy that reflection. But if the mirror gets broken, or the mirror gets taken away, you won't get a doubt that my original face is gone. Your original face continues. Similarly, Atmananda continues even if the Vishayananda is not there. And only a jnani knows this. A jnani doesn't. So this Vishayananda that comes and goes, it is a dependent ananda, and it has got these three doshas. Dukkha mishritatvam. Yes, it is mixed with sorrow. Why is it mixed with sorrow? Because there's struggle in its acquisition. One has to put in a lot of effort to configure the world in accordance with my ragas and dveshas. Struggle and effort is required. And then there is struggle in the maintenance, because once you have configured the world, it's not that the world will remain like that. The world keeps changing. And therefore, there's struggle in its maintenance. And finally, whatever be that external situation that is resulting in the conducive state of mind, that can never be permanent, because there is nothing permanent in this world. It may be a person, object, situation, whatever it is, there is nothing permanent. Therefore, finally, there is sorrow in its departure. Dukkha mishritatvam. And atriptikaratvam, because it is anitya, it will always leave me unfulfilled. Either that object situation or person object situation has to depart, or his body mind has to depart. In either case, if there is a strong attachment to that person, object, or situation, that will bring sorrow. Dukkha mishritatvam, atriptikaratvam. And bandhakatvam, this kind of an addiction to this experiential happiness derived from a conducive mind, that in turn depends upon a conducive world, is bandhakatvam. It makes me dependent upon the world. The world is inherently unpredictable, uncontrollable, and unsustainable. And therefore, depending upon such a world for my happiness is not a good idea. These are some of the initial lessons of Vedanta. And therefore, Vedanta points out that as long as Vishaya Sukham is there, Vishayananda is there, you can enjoy it. No problem. But make sure that you don't get addicted to it. Make sure you don't get dependent upon it, because it is going to leave you one day. So having compared the Atmananda and Vishayananda, this verse is pointing out the meaning of the Atma Rama, as we saw in the last verse. So it points out prakashate. It says prakashate. This is the last word of the second line. Meaning this he shines. So who shines? It says ghatastha deepavat swastaha prakashate. Swastaha prakashate. Swasthaha means one who abides in oneself, one who abides in one's own nature. Swasthaha prakashate. So this jnani abides in his own nature. Swasthaha prakashate. And what kind of a jnani is he? Atma sukha nirvrittaha. Atmananda nirvrittaha means one who is contented, who is satisfied with Atmananda. Meaning the Ananda, that is the nature of the Atma. The Atma being full, complete, limitless. He knows I am full, complete, limitless. This is the Atmananda, which can never leave, the Atma. So, having known that I am full, complete, limitless, he doesn't need to seek anything else. Therefore, Atma Sukha Nirvrittaha. In Bhagavad Gita also, some of these verses are very closely related to some of the verses in the Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, there's this verse that says, Yastu Atma Ratir Eva Syat. Atma Triptascha Manava. Yastu Atma Ratir Eva Syat. Atma Triptascha Manava. Atmani eva cha santushtaha tasya karyam na vidyate. So Atmaratihi, meaning one who is reveling in oneself. Atmaratihi. Atma triptascha manavaha, one who is contented with himself. Atmani eva cha santushtaha, again emphasizing that. Is santushtaha, he finds this contentment within himself. Tasya karyam na vidyate, he has nothing more to accomplish in this world. So such a jnani is Atma Sukha Nirvrittaha. Therefore, Atma Sukha Nirvrittaha Swasthaha Prakashate. The one who is abiding in the knowledge of the self, one who is abiding in self-knowledge, having understood that I am full, limitless, and complete, is reveling in himself. He shines. And where does he shine? The Swantareva, meaning he shines within himself. Swantareva prakashate, which means that he is self-turned, he is introverted, his mind doesn't need to run outwards, seeking something. He is constantly dwelling on his own glory as Brahman, that is full, limitless, and complete. So Swantareva Atma Sukha Nirvrittaha Swasthaha Prakashate. And having done what, does he come to this point? Hitva. There's Hitva in this first line. In the second quarter, we see Hitvatma Sukha Nirvrittaha. So Bahya Nitya Sukhasaktim Hitva. So Hitva means having given up. Having given up what? Bahya Nitya Sukhasaktim. Bahya Anitya Sukhasaktim. Meaning the Anitya Sukha that arises from Bahya, from this external world. The attachment, Asaktim, the attachment to this Anitya Sukha that arises from this conducive world that results in a conducive mind because of Ragadveshas. Being in accordance with Ragadveshas. Such a Sukha, he is not dependent on any. See, really speaking, one cannot give up something unless one has held on to something else. In order to put the foot on a higher step, right? before one releases the foot from the lower step, one has to place the other foot on the higher step. So similarly, the jnani, having grabbed this Atma Sukha, Atmananda, which is his own nature, he is able to give up this Vishayananda. Itva. And it is not like a painful sacrifice where you have to give up something that is very difficult to give up. For an Ajnani, it seems like it is very, very difficult to give up. But for a Jnani, because he has held on to something higher, something more reliable, something more dependent, he doesn't have to depend on this anymore. For example, we have talked about this, that if there is a tumultuous bus ride, if there is a bus ride in which the driver is a rash driver, and if one is taking a stool to that bus and trying to use the stool as a support, then this person gets thrown all over the place. He bangs his head all over the place. So now, having suffered these bangs to his head, let's say he becomes smarter now and he holds on to the handrail. So now do we say that what a difficult task this person has done? So he has given up the stool. What a difficult job he has accomplished. From his perspective, it is just common sense. What else would one do is what he would think. Why would you want to do such a thing like depend on this unstable stool? So to the jnani, once this knowledge has arisen, it becomes very natural, but it can seem very difficult to an ajnani. And therefore, even Bhagavad Gita points this out, where Bhagavad Gita says that if you are standing in an overflowing water body, let us say that you are standing in a lake that is full of water, and you're already waist deep in that water, right? Then of what use is that water in a small well somewhere, right? Yavan artha udapane sarvata samplutodake. Meaning for one who's standing in this huge water body with enormous amounts of water, why would he crave for the water in that small well which is almost drying up? Why would he want that water? Similarly, we say bahya nitya sukha saktim hitva. In his mind, there is no craving for things of the world. And there's, even a sort of a modern example that we can take. Because for an Ajnani, there's a lot of emotional investment. Ajnani makes a lot of emotional investment in people, objects, and situations. But if you take an example from finance, then the people who provide this financial advice, etc., they say don't put your eggs in highly volatile instruments, things that are going up and down. Because if you put all your eggs in that basket which is highly volatile, then you may end up losing everything. So even from a financial point of view, they say that one has to not put all the eggs in one basket. So similarly, Vedanta tells us that don't emotionally invest in things that are ephemeral. Ephemeral people, ephemeral objects, ephemeral situations. Don't put all your emotional investment in such a basket. It is a very bad idea. And therefore, the Jnani, these are all the initial lessons of Vedanta. The Jnani has has as a sadhaka understood all of these lessons. Now he has also gained the knowledge where he clearly knows that what Vedanta is talking about is 100% true. Therefore, bahya nitya sukham, bahya nitya sukhasaktim hitva. And then Bhagavad gives the example of ghatastha deepavat swastha swantareva prakashate. So he is like this ghatastha deepavat, meaning that he is like this lamp that has been placed in this pot. So this example again taken from the Bhagavad Gita, which gives the example of a lamp placed in a windless place. For example, you sometimes when there is this fan that is on and you have to light a lamp, then you place this kind of a glass enclosure around the lamp, and then the lamp doesn't flicker anymore. So Bhagavad Gita also gives this example, yatha deepo nivatastha negate na ingate. Just like a lamp in a windless place does not flicker, similarly, this jnani also is like this lamp that has been placed in a pot, ghatastha deepavat. Because his mind is not running after, not craving for anything else, he is contented, he is happy, fulfilled with Atmananda. He doesn't seek this Vishayananda. And therefore his mind is like an unflickering lamp, which of course a jnani can also engage in vyavahara. But even otherwise, when the jnani is not engaging in vyavahara, then his mind is dwelling on Atmananda. He has this aham brahmasmi vritti at that point in his mind when he dwells upon his own glory, his own Atmananda. Therefore, his mind doesn't run outwards, it just revels in his own self, explaining the meaning of Atma Ramaha, Atmani eva krida yasya saha. And therefore, just like when this lamp is unflickering, then one can go and even read in the presence of such a lamp. It illuminates. It illuminates without. If the lamp is flickering, then it may be hard to read in such a light. Similarly, this jnani's mind that is steady, calm, reveling within himself in his real nature. Then, if one approaches such a jnani can also illumine one's life. That is the analogy here. So does this mean that the jnani is constantly in some kind of samadhi, meaning he is not aware of the external world at all? We say that is not the case. The jnani can also engage in vyavahar. But in the back of his mind, the jnanam is always there. That whatever I am seeing, it's all nama rupas only. They don't have an independent existence. I alone am the reality. I am the non-dual reality. This jnanam is always there at the back of the mind of the jnani. And therefore, it doesn't mean that the jnani is constantly in samadhi. Or we can even say that yatra yatra manoyati tatra tatra samadhaya. Meaning wherever the jnani's mind goes, he is always in samadhi. Meaning that he is not taken over by the world. He doesn't mistake the world to be the reality. And therefore, his knowledge is always there. He always abides in this knowledge. We'll go to the next verse. Upadhisthopi tadharmaihi
उपाधिस्थोऽपि तद्धर्मैः
alipto vyomavan munihi.
अलिप्तो व्योमवन्मुनिः
Sarvavinmudhavat tishthet.
सर्वविन्मूढवत् तिष्ठेद्
Asakto vayuvaccharet.
असक्तो वायुवच्चरेत्.
So here, Bhagavad is talking about how the Jivanmukta remains totally unaffected. So he says, Tishthet, meaning he remains. Sarvavin mudhavat tishthet. Tishthet means he remains. And who remains? Munihi tishthet. The last word in the first line, Munihi. Munihi tishthet, meaning the Jnani remains. And where does he remain? Upadhisthaha api munihi tishthet. The Jnani remains. Even though associated with the upadhis, the Jnani remains. The sentence is incomplete. We will see what it means. So even though he is associated with these upadhis, upadhisthaha api munihi tishthet. So how does he remain? That is the crucial question. How does he remain in these upadhis, even though he is associated with these upadhis? How does he remain? Tad dharmaihi aliptaha. Upadhisthaha api tad dharmaihi aliptaha munihi tishthet. So even though he is in these upadhis, he is not affected by the attributes of the upadhis. Tad dharmaihi aliptaha is untouched, unaffected by the attributes of the upadhis. Why? Because he has very clearly understood that I am the Satyam Brahma. And I, with my Maya Shakti alone, have projected this entire world. This world is only Nama Rupas. And as Nama Rupas, they can never affect the Adhishthanam. And therefore, I am totally unaffected by all of these Mithya Upadhis and their attributes. And Bhagavad gives the example, Vyomavat Tishthe, like space. Like space is unaffected by whatever happens in space. The sun has been shining for a long time. Then the space doesn't become hot. Or if it has been raining for a long time, the space doesn't become wet. Whatever happens within space, everything happens within space. Space accommodates everything, but space is untouched by everything. In fact, there is a related verse from Vidyaranya Muni by him. There's a text called Panchadashi. There's a beautiful verse there that is relevant in this context. And it is one of my all-time favorite verses. And therefore, we will see that briefly. That verse says, Maya megho jagan neeram varshat tvesha yatha tatha chidakashasya no hanihi no va labha iti sthitihi. So Vidyaranya Munihi is talking about a Jivanmukta. And he's comparing the example of dark clouds. The dark clouds bring in a lot of rain. So he's comparing, this is the example, and then there is the space. So when these dark, heavy clouds are lightning, thunder, and rainfall, and then there is the space. So space is utterly unaffected by whatever the clouds do and whatever the rainfall they bring. There may be flooding, right? There can be flooding, and then the Prithvi on the earth, there can be a lot of devastation. Trees can get uprooted. Houses can get washed away. But one thing remains totally unaffected in the entire drama, which is the space. Space is entirely unaffected. So similarly, Vidyaranya compares Maya to these dark clouds. Maya Megha Jagan Neeram. So just like these clouds produce these heavy rainfall, Maya produces this Jagat. Varshatu Esha Yatha Tatha. Yatha Tatha Varshatu. Let whatever rainfall happen. Space is totally unaffected. So Chidakashasya no hanihi no va labha iti sthitihi. So this space is unaffected. Similarly, the space like consciousness, Chidakashaha, is utterly unaffected. No hanihi no va labha iti sthitihi. The space has nothing to gain, nothing to lose. Similarly, the space like consciousness has nothing to gain and nothing to lose, no matter what rainfall Maya brings. What Jagat like rainfall these clouds of Maya bring, the space like consciousness is utterly unaffected. Therefore, the Jnani's vision is exactly this. That I am this imperishable, all-pervading consciousness that is Brahman, that is utterly unaffected by Maya and its products of Maya and the products of Maya, because they are all dependent upon me for their existence. They are all in a lower order of reality. I am utterly untouched by whatever happens. Therefore, Vyomavat Tishthe. He remains in these upadhis, even though associated with these upadhis, he remains untouched like space. And sarvavits, mudhavat tishthe. So even though he has this highest knowledge that is possible, sarvavit, meaning he knows the essence of everything. He has found the tattva of everything. Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara. He has found the tattva of it, meaning the ultimate reality underlying Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara is Brahman, and he knows that I am this Brahman. So he has discovered the ultimate Upadana Karanam, just like the knower of gold knows all the ornaments. They're just variations in Namarupa, they're essentially gold. Just as a knower of clay knows all the parts. They are just variations in Namarupa. They are essentially clay. So similarly, this Jīvanmukta has known the essential nature of what really is. As I am Brahman, everything here is my Namarupa. What more is there for me to know? He is Sarvavit. But even though he is a Sarvavit, Mudhavat Tishthet. Meaning he, in the society, amongst the Ajnanis, there are a lot of Ajnanis who have no interest in Vedānta, for example. They just want to keep doing whatever they're doing, or they want to continue with the Anushtanams of the Veda Purva, for example. And amongst them, the Jnani behaves like a Mudhavat. He also, his body looks very similar to everybody's body. And he may even engage in the same activities as a Grihastha Jnani, for example. He may continue to help the others carry out whatever karmas are required, and he himself may set an example for others by performing all the same karma. Because the difference is internal. So amongst the Ajnanis, he might just look like another one of the Ajnanis. There is no external difference. And Bhagavan Krishna also advises in the Gita. He says, "Na buddhi bhedan janayet." Na buddhi bhedan janayet. Meaning, amongst the people who are still not, who have not got the maturity to understand Vedanta. Don't discuss Vedanta with them. Swamiji says that the first condition for discussing Vedanta with somebody is that there should be Shraddha in the Veda and the Shastras. And if one does not have Shraddha, then if one is a scientist, one can discuss science with him. Or somebody is excited about IPL, one can discuss IPL with him, Swamiji says. Now, with such people, you can discuss IPL. Don't bring up Vedanta. So, Sarvavit Mudhavat Tishthe. And therefore, there will be no external signs that this person has got this knowledge, unless somebody approaches him for that knowledge. And then he brings out that knowledge. In fact, even in Mahabharata, Krishna was there, just like Arjuna's friend. Throughout Mahabharata, Arjuna knew Krishna mainly as his friend and his relative. Until Arjuna faced despair in his life. And then he approached Krishna as a student saying, give me this knowledge. At that point alone, Krishna brought out this knowledge. So, Sarvavit Mudhavat Tishthe. And Asaktaha Vayuvaccharet. And being unattached to everything, he can move about. He can move about like Vayuhu. The example of space is given saying that space is totally unaffected by whatever happens in space. An example of Vayu is given to say that Vayuhu just moves about without being still, without being attached to anything. And therefore the examples of space and Vayuhu, Akashaha and Vayuhu are given for a Jivanmukta. Even in the Uddhava Gita, which is a section in the Bhagavatam, there is a conversation there where Dattatreya talks about his 24 gurus, and amongst the 24 gurus, which are all examples he takes from nature, from where he has learnt something. So amongst those 24 gurus, he also includes Akashaha and Vayuhu as his gurus. So now, we will. I was hoping to cover the next tours also, but since we are already running out of time, I will stop here. We'll continue in the next class. The next verse talks about the Videha Muktihi of this Jivanmukta, meaning the fall of the body of the Jivanmukta. We'll take that up in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.